The Cry Bully's eulogy, Hassan's Saline Symphony, and Destiny's roast in the age of Twitch martyrdom.
I've been doing this for 10, 12 years at this point. I've heard it all. I mean, I'm getting threats right now, like active threats from a cyber stalking cult that has been up my ass that's incredibly pro today. People are trying to deplatform me today because I said Palestinians have a right, a legal right, a responsibility, and a moral obligation to defend themselves against an occupying force that is illegally occupying them, conducting a night raid. It doesn't matter who is conducting that night raid in that time frame during that night raid. They have a legal right to defend themselves militarily. They have a right and a moral obligation to defend themselves. If they choose to do this matter, who is wearing the IDF gear? And now people are trying to say that I'm advocating to
find a way to talk about the conflict where you're not constantly talking about how all Zionists are worth being taught. Is justified, how isn't real when it's Jewish people complaining about. Like, if you can find a way to talk about the conflict without sounding like the unhinged stereotype of a Turkish person you seem to be fitting into at every single point in your life, being the most insane possible, because you're talking about like you can find a way to do that. Find a way to do that. Maybe you'll be okay. I believe in you, okay? I don't actually believe in you, because this is all a fortress. Because at the end of the day, you don't give a fuck this anyway, which is based, also. To be true, what would I say for...
I'm doing threats to content creators right now. That's not the case at all. It's not. They're doing that because they want me deplatformed. That's it.
He's gonna cry? Holy shit. Wait, do I need to be ready to cry? Hold on. Tell me if he cries. If he's crying, it's how you know, because I need to get my tears ready, okay? He's so pressed. This guy, like, owes his life to me. Like, can you imagine if he had to try to make a living on Twitch before I carved out, like, a whole space for politics? This guy would have actually killed himself. Well, he wouldn't have survived. He would have killed himself. Holy shit. You're welcome, low bro. Jesus.
Brother Habibi, listen, I don't blame you for having them on. I actually ever heard. Just don't.
And it's not even for, like, it's... Like, the difference, too, is, like, if you look at how he goes in on Ethan, saying his wife is, like, a terrorist IDF soldier, or me, like, obsessing over my 14-year-old child. I know it's a preferred age range he has for people he'd like to debate, and probably. But, like, all of the he's doing on other people are insane. And then look at what he's catching heat for. He's not catching heat for his kid or for his girlfriend or for, you know, some personal life thing. He's catching heat because he's advocating for insane political that he's been doing over and over and over and over and over again, right? In the wake of a time when there are Jewish people getting in the United States for being Jewish, and then on the backs of justifying, like the October 7th, on the back of blatantly supporting organizations that are designated FTOs, foreign terrorist organizations in the United States, advocating for the infinitely justified, terrorist organizations that other streamers have gotten banned for, right? Kirachot's got banned for supporting the PFLP, and he's saying, like, all into the PFLP, the DFLP, from Hamas, from Al-Aqsa flood brigades, like, are all justified in the West Bank. Like, bro, shut the fuck up. Don't cry over this. Oh my God. You cover something different too. No one's forced you to do this. Go cover some other shit that's, like, maybe a little bit less intense. I don't know. Like, this guy is, like, acting like he's, like, a bigger victim than the Jesus.
Don't let this turn into a price offer situation. Take some accountability.
Oh
my God.
Oh.
Let's just move on, please.
Like, how hard is it to just not, like, you just don't bring up like, why do you even have to bring up Ethan Klein and his wife? They're not even, like, I'm not trying to be mean, but they're not even, like, really relevant to the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I guess if they're tagging him, I guess I would have to see how the response about it. But this guy was watching, like, this whole thing originated from him watching some documentary or whatever on the conflict, and then out of nowhere, he just has to bring up Ethan's wife. It's so weird. Like, you tried to take the lowest creepy shot at his wife for no reason, and now you're mad because you're catching, like, the slightest amount of heat for it. Again, that's not why he's mad. He's mad because he's lost his, like, monopolistic control on Twitch because he got outpaced by Roach Man, and he has no more friends left on the platform because it's not even mutually beneficial for them anymore to be involved with it. And he lost his ads, and now AT&T and other companies are, and he lost his connection to Ethan because he couldn't control his hateful rhetoric or his audience for, like, 2 seconds. Yeah, I don't know. Jesus. Like, you have to understand that when you go to certain places, but he's not even really getting hit back on those personal places. Like, it's so cringe. It's like I said with the Tectone stuff. Like Tectone started making fun of my kid, but it's because I made fun of his dad. And I, like, in my kid, if you want, if I want off on your dad, you go, oh my God, whatever. It is what it is, you know? But for Hasan, like, if you're going to go off on people's, like, personal, nobody's even going off on his personal. There probably are, to be fair. I'm sure there are some people going off on his personal, maybe. He doesn't even have a personal life. I don't even know what you would have personally for. Sometimes I see people on my subreddit where they're like, why don't you go off on Hasan personal? I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about personal. I don't even know if this guy has a personal life. This guy spends all of his time streaming and then watching my stream to figure out what his talking points are for the next day. It's a 50-50 between what talking points can I steal from Destiny and then kind of like reformulate them into my own to sound smarter than I actually am, and then what can I obsess about in his personal life that I can talk about to add on him, I guess, the next day, so I don't have to respond with substance to any actual talking point about it. It's so cringe. God, ugh.
The internet is no stranger to crocodile tears. We have seen influencers sob into ring lights over canceled merch drops, politicians blubber before cameras when their lies catch up with them, and gamers break down because the lag gods betrayed them in ranked matches. But rarely, oh so rarely, do we see a man weeping over the possibility of losing his digital megaphone because he cannot keep his own rhetorical blade sheathed. This spectacle belongs to Hasan Piker, whose recent on-stream breakdown over his fear of Twitch exile. There are tears, and then there are theatrical tears. Tears that do not emerge from the well of human pain, but from the drought of intellectual bankruptcy. Tears deployed not as catharsis, but as cudgel, weaponized into sympathy bait for an audience trained to mistake mucus for martyrdom. And into this soggy theater waddles Hasan, his voice quivering, his nose reddened, his eyes glistening not with sincerity, but with the calculated dampness of a man caught in the very trap he set for himself. He had spoken of militaries. He had spoken of obligations. He had spoken of targeting the spouse of a YouTuber, not as an individual, but as a uniform, a cog in a war machine. He had thought himself radical, brave, revolutionary. But then the tide turned. The audience did not cheer, the brands did not smile, the platform gods shifted uneasily in their thrones. Suddenly, the radical was merely reckless, and recklessness on Twitch is not currency but quicksand. Thus the tears. Thus the trembling voice. Thus the cry-bully symphony of a man too online to understand that martyrdom requires courage, not wet cheeks. And at the back of the theater, Destiny leans against the wall, laughing. Not kindly, not sympathetically, but with the cold amusement of an executioner watching the condemned trip over their own noose. What makes a cry-bully is not mere crying for all men cry, nor is it mere bullying for all men lash out. It is the marriage of the two, tears weaponized to justify the very cruelty that birthed them. Hasan makes reckless statements. Hasan drags the names of irrelevant spouses into conflicts that have already drowned in blood. Hasan paints targets where none need to exist. And then, when the backlash predictably arrives, Hasan collapses into the role of persecuted victim. Is not accountability, he seeks but absolution. He does not apologize, he weeps. He does not retract, he whimpers. He transforms himself from aggressor into martyr in the span of a live stream, expecting his audience to forget who lit the fire as long as he is coughing on the smoke. Destiny calls this for what it is, pathetic. The irony drips thicker than the tears. Hasan has built his empire on the blood and sweat of others, borrowing talking points, feasting on the labor of critics, recycling the narratives of enemies into his own distorted sermons. His days are a pendulum swing between co-opting Destiny's arguments and fixating on Destiny's personal life. Parasite by day, plagiarist by night. But parasites cannot live without hosts. And when the host begins to roast, when the host mocks the tears and punctures the performance, the parasite flails. The cry bully emerges, not because the parasite has been wounded, but because the parasite has been exposed. Why mention Hila Klein at all? Why drag a spouse into a conflict that has no need of her? Here lies the pettiness of Hasan's rhetorical arsenal. When the topic grows heavy, when the stakes rise beyond his grasp, he reaches not for principle, but for the cheap shot. He invokes names not as arguments, but as weapons. And when those weapons backfire, when the backlash scorches him rather than his targets, the tears flow once again. Destiny mocks this with ruthless precision. Why did you even go there? Why did you touch a name irrelevant to the politics at hand? You could have spoken of raids, occupations, rights, obligations. You could have remained in the realm of ideas. But instead you aimed at a YouTuber's wife and missed, only to shoot yourself in the foot. There's another layer to the tears: fear. Not fear of violence, though Hassan claims threats. Not fear of ostracism, though he paints himself persecuted. The true fear is banishment from Twitch, from brands, from the golden fountain of monetized outrage. He weeps not for justice, but for revenue. His quivering voice trembles not with solidarity, but with panic at the thought of losing ads, losing audience, losing the empire built on borrowed rage. Destiny skewers this mercilessly. He reminds the audience that Hassan owes his entire Twitch career to Destiny's precedent, to the space carved out by others who bore the heat long before Hassan discovered politics was profitable. And now, when facing even a fraction of the backlash Destiny has weathered for a decade, Hassan collapses into tears. The cry bully opera crescendos. The violin screeches. The donations flood in. But the credibility evaporates. At its core, Hassan's tears expose the hollowness of his politics. If his message were sincere, the backlash would be born with conviction. If his words were truly believed, he would defend them, not drown them in tears. Instead, he pivots to persecution, frames himself as hunted, imagines that critics conspire not against his rhetoric, but against his existence. The cry bully cannot separate self from statement, cannot admit fault without imagining annihilation. The graveyard grows crowded. One by one, the titans of Twitch stumble into their own mausoleums, victims not of censorship, not of oppression, but of their own hubris. They mistake platforms for pulpits, brands for absolvers, audiences for armies. They hurl reckless words into the void, and when the void hurls back, they collapse. Hassan's grave is not yet dug, but the soil has been turned. His tears are the first shovelfuls of dirt, his cry bullying the sound of nails already hammered into wood. And Destiny, graveyard keeper, stands ready with epitaph in hand. The opera ends where it began, with tears. Not the tears of the oppressed, not the tears of victims, but the tears of a man too fragile to stand behind his own words. Hassan weeps, the audience claps, the donations ring, but the credibility dies. And the audience leaves the theater knowing that the stage is damp, the actors are hollow, and the graveyard is always waiting.